Everybody get yourself situated. We're about to get started with the Women of React panel. So we'll be welcoming Tracy Lee back and Star Richardson, who those two are going to be moderating the panel. On the panel, we'll have Debbie O'Brien, Rachel Neighbors, Jen Luker. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. And myself. So as soon as everybody gets in, we'll get started.
Nice. Thank you, ladies, all for joining us today.
Hello, hello.
We're excited to be here.
Do you guys want to go ahead and quickly just for all the panelists, do you guys want to go ahead and just quickly give like a 5-second introduction about who y'all are? Maybe Rachel, do you want to go first?
But no, I just got here. Somebody else start.
How about Debbie?
I call you.
Okay, I'll go first. Throw me in there. So my name is Debbie O'Brien and I live in Mallorca in Spain, originally Irish, and I'm working at bit.dev. So it's a platform for sharing components across the cloud and basically building everything in React right now. So yeah, this is my new world is React. So it's lots of fun and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, everyone check out bit.dev. It is the coolest tool ever. I was magically surprised when I found out about it. Jen, do you want to go next? Oh no, your audio is like messed up.
It's buzzy.
Unplug the cable.
maybe Kayla, you want to go next?
Sure.
What do you do outside of MagnoliaJS?
Right now, nothing. Magnolia has been my entire life for like the past 2 months. But I also do freelance work for the time being. So I actually started a new job like in the middle of this coming month. So I'll talk about that later, not take up time doing this. But yeah, so I've been doing a lot of my freelance projects in React for the past like year. So
cool. Rachel, you want to introduce yourself?
All right, I'll go. I'm Rachel Neighbors. I'm an American abroad in London, and I work with the React core to document, well, React Native, React, one of these days, really, gonna get to it. Working on rolling out some brand new React documentation later this year. And yeah, been kicking around the front end development community for a long time and ended up washing up on this side of the Atlantic. Go figure.
Thank you so much for joining us. Jen, do you want to try again?
Yes.
I think so. I think it works now.
Okay, cool. So hi, I'm Jen Luker. I live in Utah and I am an accessibility advocate. I currently work for Nav. I've been in the industry for about 15 years. And as you can see from the background, I'm a huge crafter.
Yes, Jen actually taught me how to knit, me and like a million others at this conference, how to knit this one time. And it was so cool. So, and I knitted for a while and now I have tons of yarn that I'm not knitting. So yeah, thank you again, ladies, for joining. If y'all don't know me, my name's Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeap. And you know, love everything related to the community, love React. We also host MagnoliaJSmeetup.com, State of React, React Contributor Day. So definitely check those out when you get a chance. And I'm joined by my co-host today, Star. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Star. I'll link my Twitter as well. It's Allison Star. I also work at this dot. I just started as a software engineer. I am self-taught and was originally a makeup artist, so I went through a bit of a career change. And I work with full stack technologies, but here at this dot, I work mostly with front end. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool. So we have a list of questions, but all of y'all listening, I know some of you have been saying you've been waiting for this panel. So definitely feel free to put your questions inside the chat and we'll try to get to them. We only have 30 minutes, so we got to go fast. But you know, Star, I'll let you kick off with the first one if you like.
Sure. So our first question that I have for you ladies is, what changes in the React ecosystem have had the biggest effect in how you build sites today? Like, is it hooks, something else, maybe smaller? Whatever you have.
Jen, I think you're muted if you're talking.
I am so not doing well with this today. So React has been a huge change again with the outcome of hooks. So hooks has definitely been a big change. The concepts and constructs between how a app itself flows and navigates is completely different based on how hooks work. Once you get the concept down, it's pretty similar, but when you're first trying to get your mind wrapped around hooks, it was a bit of a change.
Absolutely. Over on the educational side of things, I can't speak to building websites because like I'm building the site that teaches. Anyway, it's really meta. But I came in the hooks era. So I was like, hooks are awesome. I don't know what these class things are, but I got to tell you, classes have component life cycles and trying to translate those over to hooks, it's like it's a very different paradigm and requires a different way of thinking about your interface.
Some things also go undocumented about it, or the documentation is slightly vague, so I'm going to have to talk about that later with you.
Not looking at anyone in particular, no?
No, not me, who could also make a PR to help with this. So yeah, it might be interesting. Things like the fact that you can create a use effect without a value, which means that it only runs once, as opposed to every time something changes, is something that is difficult to find if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. And therefore, I've seen a lot of people make that mistake of trying to either make it stop or just accept that it's always going to run with every change.
Yeah, turns out documenting like functional programming shapes kind of defies our traditional like MDN style. Here's an object, here's its methods, they take arguments, and you can just drill down. It's more like you need these expanded code diagrams that are like, this is the shape of your function. You know, like here is the function. Wait. Here is the function, here's its dependencies. And it requires like a different way of visually showing. When I work with these engineers who are like just slogging through React day in and day out, they recognize what code is doing by just glancing at how it looks on the page. And that is harder to document. That's harder to explain. So we're putting a lot of energy into making sure that when we're explaining how hooks work, we're helping people recognize those patterns and providing more like anatomical diagrams for how these things work, as opposed to, you know, very complicated, long-winded essays that are distributed in 3 parts across several pages, or API documentation that that you know just doesn't work the same way MDNs does. But my goodness, yeah, hooks really changed everything. But I wonder what else has changed about the ecosystem. You people build all the time, and I'm curious to know what it's like in the field.
I just know components are a lot easier to build from when I started learning React like years ago, and then I stopped using React. I was into the view world, and then I came back to React and I was like, oh yes, no constructor anymore. Yes, it just made more sense, right? So that's been so nice.
I think it's really interesting to listen to, you know, it's like everybody who comes in at different phases of wherever the framework is, it's like, or the library, sorry. But it's like, which, you know, do you think hooks is easy? Do you think, you know, classes are hard, right? Or do you think like hooks is a new paradigm still and you haven't messed around with it yet? So sorry, Rachel, for all the people you have to try to teach on all the different levels and bases as well. I think another question is, you know, I know a lot of, you know, a few of you on the panel have been on like doing React for forever. it seems. So do you have any like preferred architectures for React, or even those of you who haven't like been doing React forever, any preferred architectures that you've seen or that you recommend, or recommendations on how to structure apps well?
Build them in Bit, of course.
Do you want to tell us what Bit is really quickly?
Yeah, so Bit is a platform for sharing components easily between different organizations, different repos. So you could create like a component library in one repo, and then you could create an application in another one that's using the same components. You can distribute those components very easily. Bit looks after the packaging for you, so you don't have to worry about like, versioning and packaging. It does all that work for you. And then in your application where you want to consume that one, you just then use npm or yarn to install that component. But another great thing is you can also import the component. So we're working on a component, say me and Tracy are doing some work, and Tracy has a component and she goes on holidays and I don't have access to her repo. I can import her component. I can then modify that component, make a new version of that component, and then just eject it from my workspace, right? Because it lives in Tracy's, it doesn't live in mine. So it's like really, really, really cool. And there's so the new version is out, so we support for React, React Native, and Node right now. So we can create a React hook as a component, for example, and then share that hook across different applications. So lots of very, very cool things.
I feel like
fighting with this exact problem right now. So hold please.
I feel like you just described like the NPM of UI.
Yes, but not just UI, right? Because a React hook is not a UI. I don't consider it as a UI component, right? So there are UI components, but there are non-UI components, and there's Node.js components, and there's CSS components. As like you can create anything, and you can even create like an app as a component, right? So you can even create an app and then share that, etc. So there's lots of really cool ways, but the best thing is discoverability. So you can actually see all the components, you can see the code, you can see the tests running, and you can see everything, so that your designer can see it, or your project manager can see it, or anyone, before it's like goes live and gets consumed in your application, etc. So yeah, it's really, really cool, and it's all built in React, of course. So
We might have to rebuild this as a Bit advertising slot, because this is awesome, and I have like 50 questions. So
yeah, I feel like when I first discovered, I was like, oh my God, this is the reason why it's so good, is because like junior developers, mid-level developers, people who kind of want to get into, I feel like, the seniors are like, okay, like, how do you architect things, right? What's the magical whatever? But like having a tool like this really helps people of all different levels be able to, be more senior, let's say, and even provide, like guardrails for everybody. Kayla, you've been doing this a while. Like, do you have any recommendations or like preferred architectures or anything like that when you go into the project?
So I've actually only been doing React for about a year. Before this, I was a like Angular JS, not Angular like modern Angular, but Angular like old, nobody should use Angular developer, because I worked in enterprise environments where they latched onto it. So I only transitioned into React work like beginning of last year.
Yeah, all you have to do is host a conference and everyone's like, oh my God, she's been around forever. Obviously she's
That's all it takes. That's all it takes. No, so I can't speak to architecture stuff because I don't know, like, I don't have a ton of experience doing like, a lot of different stuff because I'm self-taught and I haven't had to work with anybody using React apps and stuff like that. So I will definitely, push that off onto people who have been working on teams and stuff and like, working with more experienced people in the React environment than myself. But yeah, I mean, anything I know and then like getting started doing that, I decided that I wanted to, and I see one of the questions is the tips for somebody getting started with React and what made you pursue it. But sorry, I'm getting a bunch of calls, so they're buzzing my my phone. but anyway, so I got like a Udemy course because React was where the money was, especially like a year ago. Like everybody would seem to be hiring React devs. So I followed a Udemy course, and then I moved over to like doing Egghead for like really specific stuff, and like Egghead really helped fill in the gaps in my knowledge. But yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I guess
problem.
kind of moving into that subject with the question that someone asked about tips for people getting started with React. Along with that, like maybe what are some common pitfalls or sticky situations or anti-patterns you see devs, beginner or otherwise, kind of build into their React apps, and how can they fix those?
Yeah, I think because the docs are a little bit outdated, so that doesn't help. So when I was learning React and I did a live stream following the docs, and people were in the chat saying, no, we don't do things like that anymore. And I was like, well, how do we do it then? It's not in the docs. So that was quite frustrating. Not looking at anyone in particular here, but no, new docs would be amazing. So it is frustrating when things change because you are not aware if the docs have been updated with the framework, and then like you think that that's the right way to do things, etc. So it's very hard to kind of like, yeah, keep up with learning. But what's the best way of doing it? Watching live streams. I've found watching others code as well is really helpful. I've actually, because my React skills are not the best, they're getting there. I can build an application now. I'm like, yay, finally, I'm a developer now. But I built a generator in Bit to generate the components so that I could learn React. So I've created like a theme context component, a React hooks component, a React component in TypeScript, React component in just JavaScript. And that's been really helpful. So if you go to bit.dev, you can learn React through bit.dev. So that's another way. The URL for Bit is bit.dev. That's it.
Any other like common pitfalls, anti-patterns y'all see? Rachel, you're going to create like a things not to do in React set of docs.
Yeah,
Wow.
the front page.
It's funny you should mention that. We have noticed that there are, we all try to do some of the same, similar. I don't know about you, but for the longest time, I used to try to set CSS background position -x -y. It turns out you can't do that. That's not actually part of the spec. It's always at least back then, it was always, you set horizontal and vertical at the same time with one property. But you'd naturally assume that you could do that, and then you'd be woefully saddened when it didn't work that way. But there, like with any library, there are things with React where people anticipate, oh, I should be able to do this. It worked that way in previous library, or maybe there's some part of your JavaScript knowledge that just hasn't been rounded out yet. And we've seen those kinds of pitfalls happen over and over again. And we've actually built a feature into the documentation to help people encounter it in a learning environment. There are challenges with each of the sections that you can read that kind of cover common situations that you would encounter this bit of knowledge in, and things that might surprise you, like, I wonder why this drag and drop isn't working right. Oh yeah, got to use keys. And so you can encounter it in this sort of sandboxed environment as opposed to, at your workplace on the job. Now, it's been a lot of fun. Like, I'm not writing these from scratch because I started writing them from scratch. And Dan was like, Rachel, no, that's not true anymore, Rachel. Rachel, where did you get this from? I'm like, a course on Coursera. And he's like, no, Rachel, no. And so eventually it ended up being a collaboration between Dan and I. And that's been the most fun part, I think, because Dan has seen everything, and I'm pretty good at teaching people anything, and it's become a collaboration between the two of us. And so the documentation is just doing a really good job of that. But there was something I wanted to jump in on here. Oh yeah, someone was like, why are you learning React? I gotta be honest, I came to learn React because I wanted to teach React. I saw that there were a lot of React teaching tutorials and training materials out there. And I tried a couple of them, but honestly, nothing was really sticking. And I was wondering, like, if it's not sticking for me, it can't be sticking for everybody. I would like to learn this. I would like to learn it deeply. Who could teach me? Who could teach me how React works? Yeah, I don't wonder if I could get a job working with them. Then I could teach people what they know. Yes, and that is what has happened. So a meta answer there, like why are you learning React? Well, also I like to joke. I was into web animation super big before getting into React. I liked Vue a lot because it had a lot of animation built into it. I worked on the web animations API with the W3C, documented it on MDN, good stuff. But the point is, I like to say that I love rendering engines, especially GPUs and graphics rendering engines. I was told that React had a rendering engine, so I came. Much to my disappointment, React rendering is not the same thing as the rendering that your browser does to put things on the screen. So found out about this a little too late already. I'm already overinvested in this in this ecosystem. You're stuck with me now.
I love it. So I know some of the panelists really care about accessibility here. So I wanted to ask a question. What's the best way to get up to speed on how to tackle accessibility in React applications?
Fascinatingly, accessibility in React applications is no different than accessibility outside of React applications. It's all about understanding how the rules of HTML work and then implementing those rules within whatever framework you want to use, whether it be React or anything else for that matter, or no framework if you want. So the best way to get up to speed on learning accessibility, I still prefer just installing Axe as a plugin or using the Lighthouse library, but I prefer the plugin or the extension specifically because of the fact that it goes into much more detail regarding not just what the problem is, but why it's a problem and how you could fix it in a multitude of ways. So starting there tends to give people the foundation they need to start fixing things and then digging deeper beyond that.
Yeah, I think not enough people worry about accessibility. I don't mean to say the word care, because they do care, but they don't have time to care. So then they don't care, but they do care. And it's just like testing, right? It's one of those things that are pushed off to the end. And if you have time, one day you'll come back to it. And it shouldn't be like that.
This is where my hugely passionate portion jumps in, where there's this concept that's gone through the community as of late that the best time to start with accessibility is before you write any code, but when you're working on the design and the concept and the idea. And that is true, but so rarely do any of us get the opportunity to start with a greenfield project. Most of us come into a new job or a new project and it's already has a history, it's already got its tech debt, and you're trying to code in this ecosystem and you're starting to see those problems, right? So my long story is essentially that you start with one thing and you just fix one thing. And if you can fix that one tiny thing in the biggest, most frequently used component possible, great, because then everywhere that's a problem, it's been fixed. And then dig down deeper and deeper and deeper from there. But if you fix one thing today, your app is just a little bit more accessible than it was before. And the technology behind accessibility is only a small part of the whole ecosystem of accessibility. So yes, you can make sure that your app is technologically capable of being accessible, but it's going to come down to the content to determine whether it is in fact accessible, whether it flows well enough to be considered accessible, whether the language is appropriate for the audience, whether the interactions between the components that you've created work well enough to be considered accessible. So yes, absolutely start with one thing, just one thing today that you could fix, and go from there and keep working at it, and start with you and then expand out to reviewing PRs that way, and then sharing that with your teams, implementing linters that help with accessibility, implementing test suites that also test for accessibility. I know that the Axe Core system also can be implemented into Jest and Cypress and things like that. I've used those to do like multi-tiered accessibility testing. So there's a lot that you can go into. It gets really, really deep, but if you just start with some of the low-hanging fruit, you're going to get a lot of it pretty quickly.
I think those are some great tips. And I think more people should encourage at least making small changes, because a lot of people think it has to be an all or nothing approach. So I think that's great. We are almost out of time, but I wanted to see if you guys could share maybe one of your favorite resources for learning React, or it could be something related to accessibility in React. Who wants to start? You can volunteer Debbie again.
Oh my God, I hadn't had time to think about it. Well, to be honest, you know, I don't know, because I still haven't found the perfect resource for learning yet, to be honest. I've struggled. Well, I did find something, but it's not public, right? That was my best resource, and that really helped me, but I got it from a friend who sent me this lovely thing that maybe she might publish one day. And that was the best thing ever. That really helped me. After that, I did find a very, very good YouTube channel, which was a guy who explained it really well, but it was in Spanish. So I ended up learning the context through Spanish, and it was fantastic because he described it in a way that my brain understood it. He described it as it's a magic object. And I was like, I get it now. It's a magic object. You can put anything in it and it's just magic. Fine. I finally understand the context. I thought it was something more difficult. It's just a magic object. So yeah, I don't really have any good resources, but I'm going to be creating lots of ones. So follow me, and I'm going to be teaching React and teaching myself, and you can follow and watch me learn and die along the way.
I'm going to volunteer Kayla next.
Well, I mean, my favorite resource is whichever one you can get that's accessible to you. I don't, honest, really and truly, because like not everybody can afford a Udemy course, which with what I did, not everybody can, you know, pay for anything or has the attention span or time to read the docs or whatever. Like, totally get it.
Which Udemy course did you which Udemy course did you?
I think it was like React the Complete Guide by Max. Don't know his last name. Believe he's a German gentleman.
Max Stoiber, maybe it was Max. Who knows? Maybe. That's the only Max I know in the React community.
Maybe. But I mean, he did a really good job of you know, just walking you through it. And like, I think the biggest thing is like once, yeah, that's it. But once you get like that core down, the biggest thing about learning something is just using it however you can with any, like, just think of a project to do. A lot of people have like lists of example projects, or you could just make the to-do like everybody has as an example, a to-do app. But yeah, just do whatever you can to find the pieces, even if it's on Dev or on YouTube or whatever. Yeah, make a to-do app. Yeah, and just keep working on it, keep practicing. Like if you're on Twitter, ask people on Twitter for help. Like I think that's a really good way to learn too, is just to follow people on Twitter like Rachel, like Dan, you know, people who are working on it, and learn from them. Build.
I would like to second that, and building your community is going to be the best in helping you build your knowledge base in your career. You get to a point where you realize that you can't actually know everything. And that's a really, really painful day. But when you reach that point, you start to really appreciate the community that you've built. Because just because you don't know it very well or at all, it doesn't change the fact that someone else does. And those people become those resources for you, and you start helping each other with the areas in which your Venn diagrams do not, in fact, overlap. It's not that people are smarter than you, it's that their paths led them down different roads, and therefore they know other things better than you do, and you know things better than they do. So it's not a shameful thing to rely on other people to help you through the problems that you either will temporarily have to deal with and then we'll forget about, or have to learn and learn it well. Community is good. I think
Yeah.
the additional piece that I'm going to add, I guess, for my portion is yes, build, but make sure that you build to throw away. Put everything together in one little box so that when you're ready to delete it, as we all do at some point, it's nice and easy and you don't have a whole bunch of things overlapping. So if you want to like go back 3 questions, build to be able to delete.
And build live as well on live streams. It really, really helps. Even if you have no one watching, the cool thing about like Twitch is I have very few followers. So it's like hardly anyone's there, and it's kind of cool because then like I can make loads of mistakes and not many people are laughing. But when you talk out loud and start like you're almost teaching then. So it's really, really, really a great way of learning. So I encourage everyone to live stream, even if you have no one watching, just do it. It's really good.
I just want to give a shout out to Jad Jorbin's react-tutorial.app. That was how I got started learning React, and it's interactive. It runs little tests to check your code against, does it pew? And it was a good, like if you're a person who likes to do things hands-on, but you don't have a group workshop environment, this is the closest thing you can get to that. I enjoyed it a lot. I would like to think that the things that we're making can be a great resource for people who like learning this way. I can't wait to share them all with you. And hopefully the next time I'm on a panel like this, everyone will concur that the best way to learn React is to go to the React site. But until then, there's so many great people teaching React in their communities that and there's so many things that you need to learn. Like obviously we can never document React Router or Next.js or Gatsby. All those orgs, they have their own documentation efforts, their own courses and tutorials available. But it's always going to be people learning together and teaching each other that help us learn the quickest. For me, I have like a threshold beyond which I reach out to someone and say, can you make it do the thing? I am stuck. Please make it do the thing, please. And I think it's good that we can encourage and cultivate that kind of curiosity and humility in our respective circles. It's good and healthy. It's healthy for the development and software engineering communities, and I hope it spreads.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending this panel. Stay tuned for the next panel we have tomorrow, which is React ecosystem. And thank you, ladies, so much for joining. And all these ladies are on Twitter, so you can find them, follow them, and start building your network today.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.